The best story in the NBA? What up, though? The Detroit Pistons. They are a problem. Making 8 straight wins, 117-97 over the Celtics. They manhandled the champs last night. The win of the year for them, and let's be honest, the win of a decade plus. Let's go around the horn. You got Tayshaun Prince walking through that door. He was my favorite from their most recent championship. He could block a shot. I say it again, best win in how long for the Pistons? 20 years maybe? Malik Beasley and Cade Cunningham versus Boston. Jaylen Brown didn't play, so Beasley and Cunningham out Tatum and Holiday gave the champs their second worst beating of the season. How a team that had the longest losing streak in modern league history 12 months ago has turned into this so quickly. Good story or good team? Frank Isola, around the horn to you on the ceiling of these Pistons.
Well, it's absolutely both. And, yeah, is it a bit of a scheduled loss for Boston? They played the night before, but make no mistake about it. Detroit is a terrific team. They've won 8 in a row, and this is a team that hasn't won a playoff game since 2008. And J.B. Bickerstaff, I got to work with him in June. He's a terrific guy. He spent his entire life in the NBA, and what a job he's done getting this team to defend, which is important. But Cade Cunningham was an all-star this year. He'll be an all-NBA player. But how about Malik Beasley, a guy that has bounced around a lot? What a pickup he's been, in contention for 6th Man of the Year. They'll be in the playoffs. Whether or not they can get out of the first round, I'm not so sure. A lot of inexperience. But to your point, great story.
Great story, but you put a ceiling. You make the playoffs ahead of schedule, first round. Nothing more than that from Isola. Blackistone, around the horn to you.
Well, I mean, this is a team that's got 3 scorers now. The pickup of Malik Beasley in the offseason was brilliant. This guy's scoring like he hasn't scored in several years in this league, and he shoots the ball from 3 so well. And Cade Cunningham, you just knew he would get healthy. He would be a star in this league, and that's what he's showing. I mean, he's a double-double guy almost every night now with 27, 9.5 assists a game, which is 3rd in the league. That's fantastic. They've got size, and Bickerstaff has just been underrated. I don't know JB, but I do know his father, Bernie, a lifer in this league. Certainly taught his son a whole lot of things. And this is great. This is great for the rest of the league, for bad teams like down here in D.C. You draft right, you assemble the right roster, and you get the right coach, and you can turn your season around. 14 wins last year, and they're already at 33. It's crazy.
I hear you say, I don't know if I've ever seen a team turning around like this, though. The longest losing streak in modern history to now a team in the playoffs. Emily Kaplan,
Absolutely.
Around the horn to you.
Well, you asked the ceiling. This is a team that's going to make the playoffs and has the capability to do an upset. Frank said that this was a scheduled loss for the Celtics. I've never seen a team with a scheduled loss that shot as well as Boston did last night. It's just that Detroit's defense was really good, and they played really well also. But it's further proof, we've seen it with Oklahoma City, that rebuilds can work in the NBA. You just have to be patient. You also have to commit to it. I look at Chicago, the team that is in the city I'm in. Like, they've been dipping their toes in the water, and now they're stuck in purgatory. And then you also have to make hard decisions, right? 3 coaches in 3 years. They had to walk away from Monty Williams when it wasn't working to get Bickerstaff. And then the patience of Cunningham, right? Like, we're talking about him as a stud. It's his 4th year in the league, and now he's 3rd in the league in assists. Well, he finally has shooters around him to pass it to.
Bill Barnwell, around the horn to you.
Tony, I'm beginning to believe because it's clear they're beginning to believe in Detroit. This team was 0-8 this season against the Celtics, the Bucks, and the Cavs before last night. And this was not a game where the Celtics shot 20% from 3 and they just shot the right out of a game. They are 32-1 over the last 2 years when they hit 20 or more 3-pointers in a game. They got there last night. And it didn't matter because the Pistons were so physically dominant. This is just like the great Pistons teams of years past. They start with their physicality, start with the rebounding. Second best defensive rebound rate in basketball. The Celtics rebounded 16% of their offensive rebounds last night. Obviously, they don't have the same pure talent up and down the lineup the way the Celtics do, but they play well together. They have a game plan. They are physically tough and gifted, and they're well coached. That is a team I don't want to see in the postseason.
That sounds like a Detroit basketball team, right? Go back and look at NBA history in the last 20, 30, 40 years. Every NBA champion kind of looks the same. They had a superstar, a top 5 player. They had another top 10 player. There's one team in that run, that's the Pistons 20 years ago, that had a depth to them and a lot of guys providing. Frank, I'll give you the last call.
Yeah, think about J.B. Bickerstaff. The last game that he coached with Cleveland was against Boston. Then he ends up losing his job. And last night, the signature win for him in this program, again, they have not won a playoff game since 2008. And when you draft high like they did, you got to hit. And they hit with Cade Cunningham, but sometimes it takes a while. And clearly now, this is one of the better players in the league. And it's great because that's a terrific sports town. Look at the way they reacted to the Detroit Lions, obviously. It's about time that Detroit is a competent, competitive basketball team again.
We've been horned. We'll move on. NFL Combine. We have some news of the day about potential number 1 pick, Abdul Carter. He won't need surgery on his foot for the stress reaction he's had over the last couple weeks. Adam Schefter reports he battled through a shoulder injury in the CFP. That was something completely different, but no surgery here. Was never set to work out at the Combine, but will at Penn State's Pro Day in late March. His agent, Drew Rosenhaus, somehow found a microphone and spoke into that microphone and said the foot injury is a non-factor for where he'll be drafted. Now, he may have a vested interest in this. Bill Barnwell, around the horn to you. Do you think there's any pause here with Abdul Carter?
I would hesitate to argue with Drew Rosenhaus when it comes to vested interest in Abdul Carter, but what I would say is, yes, it does matter here because this is such a tight race for the first overall pick. Tony, over at ESPN.com, we have 4 people doing mock drafts. They have 3 different players going number 1 right now across those 4 mock drafts, one of whom is Abdul Carter, who to me is the best player in the draft. But one of the reasons you draft these guys is you get 4 years of cost-controlled value at the top of the draft. And if you start taking that first year and you say, okay, well, maybe he's going to have a foot injury, maybe he's not going to play a full season, maybe he's only going to play a rotation of snaps early in the year. Now that value shifts ever so slightly. Maybe you lean towards going after one of the quarterbacks. Maybe you lean towards trading down and hoping that he falls to 3 or 5. Abdul Carter is a great football player, but the margins here are so thin that even the tiniest of foot injuries, even if you think it's not going to matter in the long term, and Julio Jones had an injury like this and managed to make it to it's going to make it to the Hall of Fame one day, but it could hurt him early in his career, and that might lead Tennessee to go in a different direction.
Emily Kaplan, your read on this?
There's only one stat I care about when it comes to Abdul Carter. 42 games played at Penn State, 0 games missed. So if you want to come and say that he's injury prone now, I think that's recency bias. I think that's feeding into the fear-mongering that happens this time of year. And I think it's galaxy branding yourself because the other stats are 41 tackles for loss, 23 sacks, and like a million quarterback pressures. Also, he's a gamer. He played like with one arm during the college football playoffs and was really effective doing so. He wasn't going to miss that. That's the guy that I would want to build my entire team around. If he falls, so be it. I just think he's going to be motivated and be as productive and available as he was in college.
Kevin Blackistone.
You know, I've never heard of a stress reaction injury. I've had a stress fracture, and we've heard of those, and we know what those are. Never heard of this, but to Emily's point, I don't ever remember this guy missing a game. And going into the CFP, he was talked about, the injury was talked about, and he played, and it didn't seem to affect him there. So if a doctor says that he does not need surgery, I'm going to believe
just so we're
that
clear,
doctor,
in the
and I'm going to look at
playoff Final Four game that he was in, that was a shoulder
Right.
injury, something completely different. This is the stress reaction.
Right. This is the exactly. This is
foot.
the stress reaction. But he didn't miss a down. He didn't. I mean, he played through, and he played fine. And so I would not have any hesitancy to drafting Abdul Carter. I mean, I think he's been a monster on defense, and I think he's going to continue to do that in the NFL.
Frank Isola.
All right, you want to call me cynical? Go right ahead, because I probably am cynical. But I'm not a doctor. Neither is Drew Rosenhaus, even though he wants to be Dr. Drew Rosenhaus. Usually in these situations, stress reaction leads to stress fracture. So who's going to come out now and say, yeah, of course I want to have surgery. It's going to impact my draft standing. Would you be shocked if he gets drafted high, then all of a sudden a report comes out on a Friday news dump that, oh, by the way, he's having surgery. We think he'll be available for the start of the season. The guy's a great player. I'm drafting him, but let's not try to pretend like this isn't a big deal. The guy, part of it, what makes him a great player is his quickness off the ball. You know, planting his foot and getting to the quarterback. It's a big deal.
Do you believe he's still a top 3-pick then, or are you going to
Yes.
see him slide to the Eagles? Of course. Oh, why wouldn't he land in the Eagles then?
Yeah, the Eagles want him
No,
to
he's
slide.
still getting
Exactly
drafted.
right.
You know what a stress reaction is? It's how you respond after a stress. Let's see. Oh, stress reaction. We're taking a break. Fire cell next. An NBA story, or pseudo-NBA story, you may have seen yesterday that crossed your mind. Paul George stepping away from his podcast. He said this on his podcast to focus on getting back into shape for basketball. Last night, first show after his podcast, he had 25, 8, and 7, and another Sixers loss. Their 9th in a row. Frank, I sell the floor is yours. Woody Bond, what are you selling?
It's podcast DMP. It has nothing to do with the fact that he's struggling. He's getting up there in age. It hasn't worked out with the Sixers. It's 1 hour a week. So you're telling me when he scored 2 points against Brooklyn a couple of weeks ago, it's because he does a podcast on a Tuesday? Give me a break. What he should do when he gets back to doing a podcast, apologize to Lawrence Frank and the Clippers. He crushed them because they didn't pay him. Look how it's worked out.
Wait. I'm still confused here. I saw you tweeting about this in real time, and it appeared that you think doing a podcast was something he shouldn't have been doing to begin with, Frank. That he has a contract for $200 million. He should be only focusing on that.
Well, he's making it sound like now the season's over. I'll focus on my full-time job. That's really big of you, Paul. Great job.
Bill Barnwell, round the horn to you.
I would never disparage a fellow podcaster in Paul George here, but I am a little skeptical that there's going to be a significant difference in the amount of time being focused onto basketball as a result of this change. Went back and looked at some recent topics on the Paul George podcast. We're looking at LiAngelo Ball's song is very popular in NBA locker rooms, or J. Cole can hoop. I don't think there's a lot of research going into his topics.
You're taking shots at his topic? Wait, what about the topics we're doing on this show? Come on.
He doesn't like the
I see
content.
fist bump is one of our topics coming up. It's not like Emily Kaplan, please.
I'm sorry, I'm still overcoming the stress factor of Frank eviscerating Paul George. I think that I've heard Paul George speak over the last few weeks about him changing his philosophy in terms of pain management, that he's now taking injections in order to play. Okay, welcome to the hockey world. That's what all hockey players do. But don't you think that might have something to do with the way he's played the last few seasons and the story of his season rather than this?
That's the story of the entire franchise right now. Kevin Black is still around the horn to you.
Well, as an award-winning podcaster, let me just say I looked at the numbers, the inside numbers with Podcast P here, and his numbers are actually better after he does his podcast than before. The only thing he doesn't do.
Are you being serious here?
Yes, 17 points a game. The only thing he doesn't do better is rebound, and that's only by 1, so that's negligible. So maybe he's concentrating more on basketball mind-wise doing his podcast than when he's not doing it.
Oh, that theory.
Your research there, and we'll move on. Buy or sell to
Numbers.
NFL players. Report cards for their teams. This comes out in the last 3 years they've been doing it. There's a lot to digest here. First thing you always look for is the Fs. This year there were 4 F minuses. Browns for locker room. Cardinals for locker room. Bills for travel. Bengals for treatment of families. Cincy also got an F for food. We also learned the Patriots team played still has ashtrays in it. Bill Bardwell, does this have any effect on winning or losing? I personally don't think so, but you can tell us that and what this means.
I'm a little skeptical. I want to drill down on that Patriots plane you just mentioned. Yes, the Patriots, it's weird because they're one of the 2 teams in the NFL who not only own their own plane, they own 2 planes. And they apparently are getting low marks. This plane was not a problem when the Dodgers leased it and flew it back to Los Angeles when they were winning the World Series over the Yankees this past year. The Eagles, by the way, 30th in those rankings. The Bills, 32nd in the plane rankings. I think the Patriots would probably be a lot happier with their plane if they were winning more games.
I understand, but first let me say, if you have 2 planes, you have none. I believe we know that. But does this have any effect on the actual winning of football games? Emily Kaplan, around the horn to you.
Yeah, because I think you've seen teams make tangible changes based off of what we've seen in these report cards. Hello, Commanders. I also just think it shows where priorities are in this age of unprecedented transparency. For example, the Bears, we saw them in Hard Knocks, and Matt Eberflus was so focused on his appearance. Well, his players said that maybe he should have been managing their time a little better. Thank you, report card.
KB.
Thank you for mentioning the Commanders. One of the laziest things that happens in sports reporting is when a coach changes with the team, people talk about the culture changing. Well, the Washington Post actually went out and reported about that culture change, Jeff Bezos. They went out and pointed out that the chefs for the team were changed. They hired James Beard trained chefs. They've taken that over. They moved around the office spaces so that team units could be closer together.
Feng shui.
That was changing the culture, and it changed the team.
Frank Isola.
Yeah. And culture starts here. And how dare you, Tony? You live in this area. Does this really impact winning and losing? What owner got an F?
Woody
The
Johnson.
owner of the New York Jets, Woody Johnson. Which team has the longest playoff drought in the NFL?
The New York
New
Jets.
Look Jets.
Yeah.
Look what happened to
Okay.
Washington. Look
But if
where
you
the
look
Jets
back
are.
at a
It
more
means lot.
recent poll,
32.
Kansas City was very near the bottom, in the middle of back-to-back Super Bowls as well, Frank.
Well, maybe that's just the players complaining. Maybe they're a little
Oh,
jealous.
maybe, or maybe it's you. NFL potential rule changes. This is buy or sell 3. We spent a lot of time on tushes that needed to be pushes, but other considerations coming from the league, changing overtime to match the playoff rules in the regular season, and also 15 minutes in length, and also possibly first down tracking and more penalties that could get replay assist. Emily, what rule change would you prioritize?
Overtime. There's no reason the regular season should not match the postseason. But here's a suggestion. Do we need overtime in the regular season anyway? Wouldn't that make the end of games more interesting if you're taking gambles and strategic coaching decisions? That's the change I would
KB?
make.
It's got to be OT because it's about fairness. There's just nothing fair about one team getting an opportunity to win in overtime and the other team not getting that exact same opportunity. Got
Frank
it.
Isola?
Yeah, the onside kick, they got to get back to it. As for overtime, why not just get rid of punts in overtime? This way, you either have to go for it on all 4 downs and make it a little bit
Bill
exciting.
Barnwell.
What are we doing to the game of football? No punts in overtime? Fix the onside kick. It's not
Yes.
real football. Make it a 4th and 20. Give the opposing team a chance to run a football play to get the ball back.
For onside kicks, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that part. I believe, onside kick. I believe the end of games needs to change in the way that onside kicks are not even a possibility anymore, and you want to kind of at least have the shadow of a possibility.
We're going to do a podcast together, Bill and I.
Barnwell taking a break here. Emily Kaplan, Kevin Blackistone. That's our showdown next. College. 2 incredible wins last night, Michigan State and Temple, but I want you to focus on the oof of the losses. Maryland, tie game. They got the ball in their hands, so you know they're going to have the last shot. You thought it was the last shot, but it wasn't. Quick carry that other way. That's how Sparty hits the half quarter to win it. USF, they needed to play defense here. So look at the defense. They get a block, but a second chance for who? Owls. Yes. The Owls win. Emily, which is the worst way to lose?
Well, Frank is off podcasting, so I'm going to pour some more salt on his Maryland Terrapins. It's got to be the half-court shot, especially because the kid who hit it was 2 for 11, including 0 for 3 during the entire night before that.
KB.
It's got to be the Owls. Come on. They set up the perfect defense. They get the block, and the ball just happens to fall in the guy's hands, and he drains it from the baseline. Come on. That's harder.
I'm sorry, I don't have any animal sounds.
That was my owl impression. All right, point goes to Blackistone. I got a 3-year-old at home. Showdown 2, Dunk of the Year nominee.
And I'm not sure what they were looking at. Outlet pass grab by Smart.
Shaden Sharp, blazing hip hop and RIM
His right hand
for the Trailblazer. Kevin, is this the best dunk of the year?
Sadly, that is the best dunk of the year. He cocks it back. He brings everything into it. A shame that it happened to Champagnie, who's one of the best stories in the NBA this year, making his way into the regular rotation.
Cap?
I want to say it was the one where Ja Morant dunked over Wemby, but that was the best dunk that didn't count. So it's got to be this,
Okay.
especially because it's emphatic. He came off the bench for a career-high 36 points and then does that. Like, that's a night
It's
to remember.
all in the cupping of the ball there, too. We'll give the point to Kaplan. Showdown 3, baseball. Something that's emerged this spring. Jeffrey Yan's K reactions. this is working in spring training. He's also done it elsewhere. You think it'll work in Major League Baseball's regular season, Emily?
Yeah, well, someone's having the time of their life playing for the Rockies right now, which is great. 6 straight seasons, under 500 baseball. I think in the NFL, this is the 15-yard penalty. In the NHL, no player would ever do it, but baseball is exactly what they need. I hope he continues.
Okay,
Well, I don't know. I think one of his teammates sort of put an arm around him and talked to him off the field and say, hey, you can do that for now, but once the regular season starts, don't do it. Somebody's going to get hurt, and probably us.
Yeah, well, that's what it is, right? I'm the one who's getting some chin music. Kevin Blackstone, take those 30 seconds to FaceTime.
Thank you very much. We have the Academy Awards coming up on Sunday, and I just want to say I hope the guy who wins Best Picture is going to be my man Ramel Ross from Washington, D.C. All-Met basketball player at Lake Braddock, just across the creek. Played 4 years at Georgetown. Goes to Ireland, plays 1 year there. Goes to film school up in Rhode Island, and now has the best adaptation, Best Director for Best Picture, Nickel Boys, which was a Pulitzer Prize-winning book by Colson Whitehead. A really arresting cinematography take that he goes into this film. Worth seeing. I hope he wins.
He's a baller, huh? Did you ever play with him when you're running over?
I did. No, he's much no. 6'6". He was nice.